All right, folks, up next, Lessons Learned, a pedagogical approach to teaching motorsport history by Quinn Beekwilder and Trey Cunningham. Gentlemen.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I teach a 1 o'clock Monday, Wednesday, Friday afternoon class, and so I understand the challenges of coming back and talking to a group of people after lunch. So we greatly appreciate your attention. My name is Trey Cunningham. I am the chair of Sport and Motorsport Management at Belmont Abbey College. This is my colleague, Quinn Beekwilder. He's our program coordinator for Motorsport Management. Quinn is actually an alum of our program and then spent 10 years at Charlotte Motor Speedway working through many ranks, and then we finally got him back. So let's get started. One thing that I would like to mention right off the start is that this might seem like a little bit of a self-serving presentation to tell you about our program. However, please note that we truly are here to learn from you, and as we learn and grow and develop our program, we feel like this group of people can help us bring our program to the next level. So a little bit about Belmont Abbey. We are a liberal arts Benedictine Catholic college right outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. We have a Bachelor's of Arts degree in Motorsport Management. We currently have 40 students that are with us on campus for this program. In the fall, we are starting pending SAC COC approval. If the academics in here know what I'm talking about, our commission, our accrediting commission. We are starting an online MBA with a concentration in motorsport management. Our program specifically focuses on business management, communications, marketing, financial, and operation sides of motorsport industry. We do have a little bit of a history as well. One of our, we say our founding fathers of the program is super promoter Humpy Wheeler. His father has been associated with the school for a very long time, was a coach and athletic director at Belmont Abbey. The first course was called Racing Management in 2007, so we have been teaching classes for a little over 15 years revolving around the business side of racing. We really got a nice break in promotion when the Wall Street Journal published an article. It was referred to as the Grease Monks. Once again, we are a Benedictine college, and it's owned by Benedictine monks. And that was published in October 2007, and so that gave us a lot of nice publicity to the start of the program. We have several guiding principles, and I'm going to start with the middle one first, and that is to create and maintain a deep integration and connection with the motorsport industry. Obviously, we are located in Greater Charlotte. We consider Charlotte a great location and center for motorsports here in the United States and maybe even globally. And so we are continuously out trying to build and create these connections with the industry, much like the reason that we're here in Watkins Glen. The next one would be provide a sustainable experiential learning and networking opportunities for our students. We believe this is very important for them to get their foot in the door and have wonderful experiences, network with industry professionals, and learn from that standpoint. We require our students to do internships, and most of them do multiple internships at multiple locations in the Charlotte area or back home. And then lastly, we feel that it's deeply important to develop the entire student, right? It's guided by our faith as a Catholic college, and then obviously some of the Benedictine hallmarks of stewardship, community, and discipline. And this is where the history portion of the program comes in, is that we believe that the students should learn the history of the motorsport industry so that they are able to be good stewards as that is being handed over, the industry has been handing over to them as well. So these are our guiding principles, and Mr. Beekwilder will now talk to you a little bit about the actual classes that we have related to history.
All right, thank you very much. So really, I chose this quote here by Burt McIntosh, who was originally a photographer and early magazine producer in the early 1900s. The comment, talks about the big, far-reaching sport that was just developing, and he knew it was going to be a constant source of delight, satisfaction, and pride to us all. And he was witnessing at the time the speed trials being held at Ormond Beach. And this is, kind of where it began. So how do we cover a sport that started in 1894 in 16 weeks? It's going to be tricky. So as I usually tell my students, buckle up. So we cover many different aspects of motorsports. I try to give an entire approach from the start all the way through up to last weekend's race. So really, I reach far back. I talk about the Gordon Bennett Cup, whose equivalent prize money would be around $2.3 million for winning, an absolutely astounding amount of money. The first time that motorsports was really threatened to even, to be canceled, if you will, the Paris-Madrid race of 1903. You had 224 cars that entered. Within the first 350 miles, half the field was out, and unfortunately, 8 people were dead. The government of France steps in, stops the whole event, never even makes it to Spain. And it would be nearly 24 years, almost a quarter of a century, before the public road racing would come back again. The Mille Miglia would kind of picked up that torch. Italy kind of gets its rise to fame. A 1,000-mile race that saw the rise of Ferrari to greats like Nuvolari. The Targa Florio down in Sicily, having off and on running from 1906 all the way through 1977. Monaco, trying to entice people to come and visit this small little nation at the bottom of France. And the Germans not to be outdone, creating the Nürburgring, which you can still go for about $20 and drive on yourself today. So these are the first great spectacles we talk about. But there are plenty of people that are involved in this. And so we move on to the drivers. But there are so many drivers out there. Who do we cover? Just a brief smitten of who we cover. Tazio Nuvolari, who I mentioned previously, with his impossible victory, with his underpowered Alfa Romeo versus the Germans in the 30s, and also a never quit attitude. I mean, the story goes that he was qualifying for a race on motorcycles. He broke both his legs in qualifying, and the next day he had his mechanic strap him to the bike, and he went on to win the darn thing. I mean, that's a never quit attitude. Juan Manuel Fangio, at the early day onset as a first five-time champ really of F1 racing, and still has the winningest percentage of an F1 driver. A.J. Foyt, an American driver, the only one to have ever won the Indy and Daytona 500s, Daytona and Le Mans 24 hours, and Sebring 12 hours. Mario Andretti goes from racing in dirt tracks in Pennsylvania to USAC to F1 championships, and then all the way to Pikes Peak. Louise Smith, the first lady of racing. The story goes that she was at the beach race in '48 and raced the family car and flipped the darn thing. Would go on to win multiple events in different formats. Michael Schumacher, the first 7-time champ. Ayrton Senna. Need I say more? And Lewis Hamilton, who still to this day has a 62% chance to podium every time he gets on to start. Even the other 7-time champ only had about a 50% chance to podium. So these are a sampling of the drivers that we try to cover more in depth, obviously. But what I really also try to kind of point out is the event in Le Mans. Now, they're coming up on their 100th anniversary. The racing is not for 100 years, it was interrupted by 2 world wars, but, their 100th anniversary is coming up. There have been so many books and competitions that have kind of between Ferrari, famously Ferrari and Ford, and Audi versus everyone. And then also multiple movies have been made, books have come out. There's something enduring about that ultimate question of how far you can go in 24 hours. But it's also really important to touch on the fact that motorsports almost died again in the 55 Le Mans race. And I really try to bring that to the students' attention, where Hawthorne driving his Jaguar pitted late, and unfortunately LeVay driving a Mercedes was launched into the crowd and killing 83 plus people. But the craziest part is the race continues. It was only 35 minutes into a 24-hour race, and it kept going. They're literally dealing with the folks there, and the racing still goes. Mercedes would eventually pull out at 2 a.m. and not return to motorsports until 1987. But these are the types of influential things that happened in one event. I mean, Switzerland still doesn't allow motorsport events because of this event. And so, it's a really big, important event. But these tracks, these places that kind of have these hollow ground type, aspirations, also kind of what next is we go into tracks themselves. If we say things like Watkins Glen, Sebring, Circuit de la Sauve, Brooklands, Monaco, just the words and names themselves kind of conjure up images. But what is it about these places? Is it the surface they actually race on? Oswego even. Is it the asphalt, the dirt? Is it the banking, the chicanes, the apexes? What makes them so special? Why do people keep returning to them? Why do whole families and generations of people kind of follow through and always attend the same events year after year? There's got to be something special about them. And even places like Darlington. But that kind of rolls into what we teach and also as NASCAR. A third-rate joyride for the working class, as it was originally referred to, kind of by the AAA. How do you condense all of NASCAR's history into just a few presentations? Well, I try to break it down in three key modules, I feel as. There's the 1936 to 49, where you really have the first family of racing, the Flocks, 3 brothers and a sister who would go on to compete and be the only family of 4 really, or 4 siblings that actually competed on the same track. Their sister won, by the way. Would go on. World War II would intercede. There's so many, so much technology as far as training and such, kind of came out of that for the mechanics that would come back from the war and use their skills to improve the vehicles that they raced in. The first national champion stock car circuit, Bill France's kind of proof of concept, run in 1947, that was originally then brought to the streamline to say, hey, I can pay out the money, I can run the races, I can do the insurance. Let's go ahead and form this next thing that we're going to call NASCAR. And then the next big iteration, 1950 to 71, little Darlington, South Carolina, getting a super speedway. 1950, the first track is super speedway is built in NASCAR, and it's a funny little shape if you ever will see it. And the reason because there was a minnow pond on a corner that they sort of shifted the track to, because the landowner didn't want to ruin his minnow pond. And also the guy who eventually won the race, because NASCAR had never done a 500-mile race. 50 miles, 100 miles, that was their bread and butter. But it was a guy who'd competed at Indy and used truck tires to actually beat them all out. Carl Kiekhaefer, the first Rick Hendrick, bring matching uniforms, painted up trucks. He owned Mercury Outboard Motors. He's the first one to bring in an African-American driver into his team as well. We talk about the big 3 leaving. Basically, 1955 was starting to get a little rocky for big companies being involved in motorsports and unfortunately fans perishing. And then a race in West Virginia, or in Martinsville, actually kind of another 2 or 3 fans died, and then the big 3 kind of stepped out of the way. And so that was a big gaping hole. We talk about the second family of racing, the Lees, and how Winston cigarettes, how they lose TV advertising, but they got NASCAR, and then so that was a big change to our sport as well. 1972 to present was that last kind of big block of time where a blizzard brings NASCAR to the masses. Lights, under one hot night, all of a sudden go night racing. Professionalism in the pit crew with the Rainbow Warriors. Of course, Dale Earnhardt Sr.'s death, Jimmy 7-time, and development of the Cup car, NASCAR media, and the Frances. These are some of the things we touch on to kind of cover the history. We go a little bit more in depth with NASCAR because that's kind of where we're at. We do also cover open wheel racing in our class. We mainly focus on the first Indy 500 and really the splits between AAA leaving, USAC forming, CART and USAC, CART IRL, Champ Car World Series, and then finally reunification in the IndyCar series as it is today. We also try to ask the question, if they had stayed together throughout that entire time period, would they be more popular and kept a consistent fan base to be more popular than NASCAR is today? Or, because of all these splits and disunification, did that give NASCAR a chance to rise up and kind of beat them out at their own game? For attention, that is. We also cover the NHRA, so kind of all the impetus of what's happening on the West Coast. Everything that kind of happened on the East Coast we just previously talked about. But really it was all this talent coming back from the wars, guys who had worked on planes and tanks and trucks, were now tinkering with old cars and making them go faster. Southern California Timing Associations formed around 1948. They hold their first land speed trials out in the Bonneville Salt Flats. C.J. Pappy Hart takes a spare side runway and creates the Santa Ana Drags. Wally Park sees all this. He had been involved with time trials, creates the NHRA, and they go racing. They had their first event in Pomona in '53, and by the middle, then they have their championship in the middle of everywhere, trying it in Great Bend, Kansas by '55. The safety safari, spreading this gospel of speed across the entire country. When all these places wanted to have that badge of NHRA and drag racing, they traveled to these locations and made sure that they qualified for the insurance coverages, and made sure that things were safe. And of course, Darren Garlett and his funky rear engine, who would have thought about that? I think he was tired of losing feet. So that's the type of history that we cover in our class in 16 weeks. I'm going to turn it a little bit over to Dr. Cunningham again.
That was a lot. I don't think I could pass that final exam. So you can tell the depth that Quinn does a wonderful job teaching these undergraduate students with this MM 200 class. So really the next question and the reason that we're here is, how do we reinforce these historical concepts throughout the rest of the entire curriculum? And so we wanted to go from instructivism to constructivism through several different methods, right? We use case studies. One of our adjunct instructors is Vice President of Communications and Marketing for Roush Fenway Keselowski. And he was there during the Ryan Newman incident. And so Kevin brings some of those experiences back into the classroom and then also compares that to other historical events such as Ryan Newman's wreck several years ago. We also bring in, we rely very heavily on guest speakers. Many of the times that they have topics related to history. Another one of our adjuncts is Matt Yoakum. He teaches our sport broadcasting class, and he brings in Pam Miller, Daryl Waltrip, a lot of very well-known names who come in and talk about the importance of the motorsport history. Running a little short of time here, but we also do reflection papers and presentations that reflect back on where we are now, where we are, what they have seen today in today's society and it tracks, and how it was in the past. Before COVID, we did a little bit of travel. We did a little of engaging of the senses, as I like to say, being there at the track, understanding what is taking place in the media center, many of those types of things. We did some networking, and we also tried to teach the students how important it was that they are needing to be able to adapt to change. However, during COVID, Quinn and I wouldn't say we were bored, but we were very anxious to move our program forward. And we came up with some ideas to go from a motorsport program 1.0 to motorsport program 2.0. And so we wanted to find a way to bring the history to life. And we kind of wrote down some challenges. One was we wanted the students to recognize what makes something a spectacle or entertaining so that people will spend money within the industry. We wanted to find ways to network with influencers outside of our normal bubble of Charlotte. We wanted the students to experience the endurance, the physical endurance, and the flexibility that is required to be a part of a weekend race. Observe tracks during the operations, and most importantly, we wanted them to see the history that we've taught them in the past. That we wanted them to contrast that with business models, how business models have evolved over time, so that they're aware, they're the ones that are evolving future business models in their career. So here's the plan that we came up with.
So I approached Trey toward the end of 21 saying we need to go to more races. And so I told him my idea for 1 to 2 races, and he said, you know what, let's make a class out of it. So we created MM390 Professional Development in Motorsport. We picked several events that we thought that were not as fully packed or as attended as other events would be. If we go to the Daytona 500, FaceTime with executives or people actually who kind of would matter for their networking career for our students would be unavailable. But places like the 24-hour of a Rolex at Daytona, there's a lot more flexibility. Same thing with like the Indy race at Texas Motor Speedway and even the 4-wide nationals at ZMAX Dragway. And so that's what we did. We traveled. We created a class, we took 10 students, put them in vans, and we drove down to Florida. So we drove down to Florida, and we got to experience, we met with George Levy, who runs the Motorsport Hall of Fame of America. Got a fantastic tour from him. And then we mentioned that we were actually going to the North Turn Grill. And he said, you know what, I know someone who's doing a fantastic radio show called Legends of Racing by Buzz McKim, and said, why don't you guys head on down there and check it out? And the next day, there we were. It was a fantastic show, Buzz. And while we were there and learning about that, they told us that there was still a portion of the old A1A that was still part of the original original beach and road course that you kind of can see there. And we traveled down there. I did lose into a foot race with my students, but that's okay. And so we went to the Streamline Hotel where NASCAR was founded, and it's really just noticing and really living and experiencing that history that they had taught about and been read about and took a test on, but we're now actually seeing it physically and in person. We also were able to connect with a lot of industry leaders from Tom Doonan to Kevin Kennedy with Ford Performance Marketing, some of our own grads who are in NASCAR actually, and Haley Deegan, we got hot laps with her, and because it was kind of a less attended event, students actually got to interview her for a student project. Got invited in the garage from GMG Racing, saw the entire Jackson Marketing runs all the Michelin tires and wheels with Scott Taylor. He showed us around, and so the whole back end of like what goes on for the races. And it was just really kind of that in-depth field, the different fields they can go into, the different positions they could have, the different experiences they can go with. Then we also went out to Texas Motor Speedway. It was a very long drive, but a very fulfilling drive. We stopped by Talladega Speedway at the McCaig-Wilborn Research Library and also the International Motorsport Hall of Fame. Saw a vast collection that was out there, and one of the more NASCAR things we saw, there were 2 urns right by the right-hand side of that sign, just sort of left out there. It's a very NASCAR thing to do. And once we got to Texas itself, Ram Ramage was able to kind of give us the keys to the kingdom. He was the president of the track at the time, and we met with all his top-level executives who run, from marketing to PR to track operations, and basically experienced a phenomenal weekend. And I'll turn it over to Trey to wrap things up here.
So we learned a lot. And we were very tired after the spring as well. But we're still in the process of developing, really fleshing out this more about what actually was learned, right? One is we learned that the more flexible that we were, it ended up creating more learning opportunities. We had meetings set up at specific times throughout the specific events, and all of a sudden we'd get a text or a phone call saying, hey, I was supposed to meet you at 9 a.m., but I'm not available till 11:30. Okay, so what do we do? How do we move 10 people around the pits? We needed to be very flexible. The students need to learn that because that's real life experience. We also realized that professionalism is now a priority. The first couple of events that we went to, students showed up in their what they refer to as their vintage Mark Martin shirts. And we then decided we're going to get all the students polos and jackets, and we're going to try to at least buy them some professionalism, buy them some confidence along the way. So when we showed up places, we looked a little bit like we belong there. We might not have, but so we're really instilling that professionalism within our students from day one. We totally reinvigorated our alumni. We had alumni that started seeing things on social media, alumni we didn't even know we had. They came out of the woodworks and have been very supportive. For example, Mike LaHada is the vice president of corporate sales at NASCAR in Daytona. He actually took time away from his day and gave us a personal tour of that area around the NASCAR building. We realized how important it was that building a family and a team atmosphere was. In cohesion, these students are going to be spending the rest of their lives in the industry, and no better networking and connection than their own classmates that they set 12 hours in a van with. We also realized that we needed to stop doing things with juniors and seniors and start focusing on the freshmen and sophomore. And so what we've been able to do is align all classes from the very first day that a student enters on campus to the day that they graduate. They all work and move together in many of those activities. And most importantly, the thing that we thought was going to be the most difficult actually became the easiest, and that was that industry professionals were more than willing to give their time, to give back, to give advice, to be flexible themselves, and it was quite the blessing in those events. We have a lot of other great things planned. Quinn and I truly believe that there's someone or several of you in this room that will help us bring our program to the next level. So we look forward over the next 2 days to speak to many of you, to hear your ideas on how we can move this forward. All right, that's the end of our presentation. Do we have any time for questions?
Yes, I think I left the microphone a little bit. Yes, thank you. All right, thank you. Any questions? Yes, okay, coming back to you.
So, quick question.
Yep.
How useful have you found the NASCAR Hall of Fame into helping you in your program?
Oh, absolutely. The NASCAR Hall of Fame is in Charlotte. We take multiple trips there a year. One of the class that Quinn teaches, the MM200 History, Culture, and Philosophy of Sport, there's an annual trip for all of those students in the spring. And there's a lot of events that take place. I think just last week the NASCAR championships were held at the Hall of Fame. Dale Jr. was there to present the award. The students were there, got the pictures with them. It was a great event. So we do utilize the NASCAR Hall of Fame, we're super blessed to have it so close. We utilize it as much as we possibly can.
I have a quick question about the buy-in from your colleagues at the university. How hard a sell was this when you approached the university administration and said, we want to do a motorsports degree? It seems like, I know the institution where I teach, it would be them's fighting words to try and come up with that kind of a program. But I'm just curious as to how smoothly things went for you folks.
Yeah, super smooth. Once again, Humpy Wheeler was on our board of directors and 15 years ago and introduced that concept to our president, Dr. Thierfelder. Our entire administration is fully aligned and gives us, our administration doesn't know about a lot of this stuff, to be honest with you, right? But what a blessing. We don't, they trust that we're going to do what's right for the students, and that overall, that as long as we're developing the whole student beyond just what's in the classroom, then we don't really have much kickback. And our provost was the former sport and motorsport management chair like myself. So we have a full support from top to bottom.
I was just going to say, I wish this program had existed 50-some years ago. I used to have to cut classes to go to races. And now I could actually take it as a curriculum. Where were you guys back then?
Yeah, they do still cut classes. Every once in a while, I'll have to call a professor that's kind of questioning why they're missing so much. And I'll say, this is super important. This young lady's about to go meet Lynn St. James at the Women with Drive conference a couple of weeks ago. And I promise you, this could change the trajectory of her career. Could you please let her take that exam at another time?
Just another quick one. What's the future you're laying out? I know that you've got a good groundwork. I'm very impressed, to be very, very honest about it. So what you're laying the groundwork in, and where you're going to be going in the future, expansions?
I think what we're focusing on for the future is really kind of that re-engagement of the alumni, that we have a lot of success stories who are out there in industry already. I think there was a lack of reaching out to the alumni earlier, and so just re-engagement of them, kind of bringing them back in the program, and a focus more on that team building aspect, so that once you graduate, those juniors, sophomores, and freshmen can reach out to you and then say, hey, I'd really like to come shadow you, I'd like to see what that experience is like, and create just a cycle of kind of rinse and repeat, if you will. Really emphasizing these early spring classes where we go on the trips, is really important to us to establish those networks and try to grow them, and then just kind of solidify the foundation we're at, and kind of keep growing from there. And the numbers are showing it, so which is good.
Our MBA with a concentration in
Yeah,
motorsports will be fully online. So we're looking to expand with instructors fully online, remote instructors as well as remote students as well. We'll see where that goes.
Yeah.
Do you have any involvement with the mechanical and restoration aspects, or do you leave that to other institutions?
Yeah, we UNC Charlotte is right in our backyard, and they have a phenomenal engineering program. That's something that we're kind of not set up for. We don't have the facilities at all to teach engineering or to turn wrenches. We would like to, but it's really, we're more focused on the soft skills rather than the hands-on skills. Although our students do have their own Lemons team that they run themselves. So, whether the car makes it there or not is totally up to them.
So you said you covered open wheel and circle track and a couple different asphalt cars, but you didn't say anything about dirt. Why don't you cover that, and do you think that limits your students?
Yeah, we do actually have a handful of actual people who race dirt themselves who come through our program. I did have to cut a little bit of my presentation short for time-wise. We do cover, the World of Outlaws is right in our backyard. The finals are this weekend, being run at Charlotte. And, we do love dirt too. But, as far as, kind of coming up northeast, that is definitely something that we can start including into, like talking about Oswego and Eldora. That's why it's difficult to cover motorsport history as a whole. You can have an entire semester dedicated to dirt and its various formats and racing. So it's not that we don't like dirt. We love dirt. I love taking Q-tip and getting that mud out of my ears after an event. But it's just something that we do briefly cover. So.
Well, it sounds like initially the program was more based on the management side, but you're starting to delve more into exploring the history of racing. And I was curious, as far as job placement, what is there any do you have any type of figures as far as job placement, like what percentage of your graduates wind up landing positions in NASCAR, or if they're finding positions in other types of motorsports? And then finally, what are maybe one or two of the types of jobs that they're being hired to do? Because you mentioned UNC Charlotte, they have the technical school, the engineering school. You mentioned Mike Lahetta, great guy, 1-year alumni, because I believe he was at the NASCAR Hall of Fame before he went over to NASCAR. Are there more stories like Mike? Can you provide some more examples of the types of jobs and the amount of placement, percentage of placement you've had with the program?
Yeah. So when I was digging into the alumni, we did a alumni mixer and networking event last year as part of this professional development program the students put together. And basically combing through all the records and trying to figure out everyone through their LinkedIn pages and just trying to reach out and contact them. We have roughly over 100 graduates or so in that time span, and about half are actually had made it to the industry, or we're still in the industry, I should say. About 3/4 made it to the industry. Some spent a year or two, 3 years or so, then moved on to another job. But the majority seem to are still enjoying themselves. We've had graduates, the ones is one of the head managers at Victory Karting, which is a local karting establishment, and keeps that ongoing. We have other grads, Ian Moy, who's now over Penske's social media. He was Ryan Blaney's PR rep for multiple years, but he started out as an advisor at Belmont. A job hadn't opened up right then, but he stuck with it. He kind of persevered through. Others, Jordan Anderson is also one of our grads. He came from a dirt and late model type experience all the way through to now owning his own team. We have Morgan Overstreet was Chase Elliott's rep. She's now with Dirty Mo Media. Several folks over at Junior Motorsports as well. A lot of PR reps, a lot of social media reps. And actually, the marketing director for Hoosier Tires is one of our grads. Taylor Hole, a professional drift racer, was one of our grads back in the day. And then also a lot have ended up at Charlotte, myself included. I spent 10 years there. Tom Vesey, who's in charge of operations, is also there. A gal down in PRN kind of runs their boards. So it's a wide variety of grads all over the industry, but mostly on the soft skill sides.
Hi, you mentioned 40 students in the program currently. What are you hoping to get, and how do the students find you? How do you promote the program? Because this is obviously a very unique niche.
Yeah, that is the million-dollar question. Because it is so unique, it's hard to kind of go to Google Analytics and select college student motorsport management, let me spend my money. So in that respect, it's a lot of word of mouth. We're starting to find out that a lot more folks, and kind of like myself, originally I came from California, I had no contacts in the industry, heard about this program. You required at the time, 3 internships, and then you had these connections, and like, hey, I want to get into this industry that's very small and tight knit. They have connections. That's probably how I should spend my money. And that is kind of a recurring theme. So we have people got 2 students from New Jersey, one from England, one from Vermont, some from Oregon and Arizona and, Michigan. And so people.
One from the Finger Lakes?
Yeah, one from the Finger Lakes, actually, just right up the road. And so all these experiences of, I really want to be in it. I know where I have to be to go to it, having that large, we always tell them we never guarantee them a job, but we'll give you the best chance of getting a job in the industry. 90% of all NASCAR teams are based in there. We have the World of Outlaw Finals based there as well. So there are a lot of organizations and support, Stock Car Steel, Hypeco, just a lot of support industries that are around our areas too, that some of our students have ended up in as well. And as far as additional students, we'd love more, but we know that at some point there's going to be a larger cap. We can't have 100 people. How can we guarantee them jobs if 50 people are graduating to get into the industry? That's kind of probably unattainable. But currently, we just had a rise. We had nine incoming last year, 15 this year, and so we're seeing our numbers definitely increase dramatically, and we're ready and willing to accept them and teach them. So. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trey and Quinn. Much appreciated.